out now.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of that time in the middle was actually going through those motions and those paces with a lot of people that I work with now, you know,
Sure.
and seeing what's it like, what's it going to be like to work together, and then you end up working together for 10 years. It's like this is totally natural, totally perfect.
Well, I mean, you've mentioned this a few times, but so some of the people you came to UNH and started playing with again were people that you had played with before.
Yeah.
People that you interact with now, or even still play with now, were people from this time.
Yeah.
You know, have you found that to be true for a lot of other people, or do you think that's unique to UNH, or maybe our scene within UNH?
I think a lot of people that went to UNH and during my time have stayed somewhat in touch, and I think there was a social element here that was really interesting, you know?
Yeah.
On the other hand, I think it was a little bit dispersed, you know, and I think there was not a lot of centrality in terms of the music scene for sure. I mean,
Yeah.
and there wasn't a lot of codification in this area. I mean, in this school of this is the musical scene. You know,
Yeah.
it was definitely what was happening out in the clubs and in the field, and people forming their own kind of alliances and such. But I'm from a pretty exceptional town in that the people that I went to elementary school with. I mean, I still have 8 or 10 guys I talk to on a regular basis. We've known each other since we were 4 years old. You know.
That's cool.
But even in in this area, like we talked about, some of the guys that I play with in bands now, these are people that I shared stages with and didn't necessarily know very well.
Yeah.
And now I'm working with them, or they're working for my company, or we're collaborating in a meaningful way. So that would be something else. Is I know a lot of people who went to school and they left that school, and I said, who'd you meet? What happened? And they didn't meet anybody. Nothing came out of it.
Sure.
And the same people that I went to elementary school with, that I sat next to in classes, I'm working with them professionally.
Yeah.
So it's relationship building and long-term thinking about, well, you can have a little blip in the radar of your relationship, but that's just one small thing in this larger continuum.
Sure.
And that's talk about lessons in leadership. I mean, that's really it. It's just making sure that that what you're doing is for the greater good.
Yeah.
And it's going to be sustainable.
What's something that you wish somebody had pulled you aside and told you when you were an undergrad, that would have maybe saved you a couple of painful lessons?
Oh, there's a lot of ways to professional satisfaction.
Okay.
That you might not be aware of.
Okay.
And that when I was playing a lot, it was all about playing gigs and getting up in front of as big an audience as I could.
Yeah.
Wasn't thinking much about the concept of intellectual property.
Okay.
Wasn't thinking a lot about the concept of how to help an underserved market, which is what we do professionally, I think, in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
I think, looking back, and this time in particular, in school, I definitely think that it was, if somebody could have told me and basically said, don't feel like you're locked in a one career track because of what you're studying at this exact moment.
Sure.
The way it's structured, and again, I'm a little bit ignorant about what's happening right now in the academic educational environment, but the way it was structured for me and for the people during that time, I mean, when I transferred from UVM to UNH, I mean, I got into this huge argument with UNH about, whether UVM's 3 credit courses were the functional equivalent of their 4 credit courses.
Yep.
And I know they wanted to squeeze in the semester out of me, and they did. And so I think that's something that a lot of people fear. And so the concept of what is called a liberal arts education is not so liberal anymore. It's you go into the chute, and if you don't know in the chute what you want to do,
Yeah.
then you don't even have time to explore what is called gen ed. I mean, isn't that the idea?
Yeah.
So I think a lot of my peers, I think, got sucked into that chute, which is just, you start off studying one thing, and then you almost feel like you can't move off of it, and you're gonna be stuck doing it, and it happens.
Sure.
Again, for me, I'm very lucky in that I had a sense of what I wanted to do. I knew that what I wanted to do was not related to what I was going to study,
Yeah.
and I chose. I said, what I want to study is English, because I love to read, I love books, I love literature, I love writing, which was the greatest thing I could have done professionally, was because it really taught me how to write effectively and how to
Yeah.
communicate in writing. And it's almost like the equivalent of someone who says, well, I'm working for the weekend, or I'm doing my day job to do what I want to do artistically. I studied English because I didn't want to study music, because I wanted to keep it something that I wanted to do professionally, and I knew I couldn't,
Yeah.
it wasn't going to work for me, So, I mean, I think, again, that tale of, like, you can change horses in the middle of a stream if you want to.
Yeah.
Maybe I would have done that if I had known that it was possible. But I think going back even further in high school, I wish somebody had told me that I didn't need to be a rock star to be a professional in the music industry.
Sure.
Would have been good to know. Yeah.
So if you let us, we will continue to do this for quite some
Yeah,
time.
any
And I
questions?
realize that I've been mostly kind of making eye contact here and not looking out this way. So I do want to open it up. Is there some kind of question? Really, is clearly we're not sticking to one subject area. So does anyone have any questions for consideration or a differing opinion that they'd like to offer? Please feel free.
I'm into arguing.
That could be dangerous. It could be fun.
I'd love to hear you talk about, once you get out of school, the idea that you're actually still in charge of your own education.
Oh, yeah.
Or what then becomes known as professional development.
Mhm.
So I assume that you believe that's true.
Yeah.
And if so, what is it that you have done to continue that?
I think in college you're still in charge of your own education.
Okay, yes.
And I know that because I screwed up. Because, in the high school that I went to, I mean, that was such a fantastic education. None of the teachers cared. When I went to UVM, I remember it was kind of that shocking moment of like, nobody cared if I showed up. They didn't care. It really wasn't, it didn't matter. I mean, in the
Sure.
end, and I did have a couple professors and people here in this university who absolutely cared if I showed up because they knew that if, whatever, I had some
I got it.
small abilities,
Yeah.
But, it was, looking back on it, it's so interesting to think that, like, when you're in college, you really do have to actively engage in it to get anything from it. And I wasn't really aware of that at the time. That was a really weird thing. And I think, if the minute you stop learning is the minute you should probably cash in your chips and just say that's about it. I think professional development and saying, well, I want to do this, and I can't do it right now for X and Y reasons. So what do I have to do on the side to make that happen, to get to where I want to go? That's like so important. It's the most important thing in the world, And I think a lot of folks get stuck in that trap of thinking that they're going to learn everything that they need to learn in college, and then when they get into their job, they're going to learn everything that they need to learn, for their job at their job, and they're going to get trained to do their job. And I mean, I am a bad example of this, but so little of, I think, what happens in terms of your education happens in the context of your job.
Yeah.
It needs to happen outside of the job, and then you bring it to your job.
Absolutely.
I think,
Yeah.
And again, with the college thing, it was a mistake of mine to think that I was going to go in and have teachers like I had in high school who were going to force you to do what it is that they knew that you should be doing. And not every high school teacher's like that, but mine were, and I think you get a lot less of that in college. And then when you get out in the real world, right?
Sure.
I mean, again, the people are not looking to qualify; they are looking to disqualify. They're looking to see, if this guy's not going to make it in this job after 60 days, then I better be ready to move, and I got a transition plan in place, and all the rest. And very few companies will foster the development, I think, in that way. Now, again, this is coming from someone who's never existed in a corporate environment.
Sure.
I've never been a part of an office existence. I've never had anything like that. So there's a lot of differences in terms of that, where professionally you can go work at a company and they're gonna pay for you to increase your education because it's gonna help their company.
Sure.
But that's up to you. That's up to you.
Yeah.
I think. I'm curious. What are you guys doing? What's the goal in the education here? Anybody want to tell me that? I'm curious. No on that. Me
There's a
too.
camera in the room.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
So why don't you tell me what's been going on here? What's happening in the leadership program?
We've got all kinds of stuff. Let's see. We had a very successful leadership camp over winter break. I know some of you have been to it. Those of you who haven't, it is a 5-day intensive retreat that we do up at Camp Mara Vista, which is in Tuftonboro. It's one of the few places sort of left where cell phone coverage is next to gone, because it's in this sort of crater by a mountain up in the Lakes region, and with my Verizon phone, I've got like a bar. I've got enough that like an urgent text about like the bus may or may not make it up the hill with everybody, that can get through, but everything else has got to be pretty much landline up there. So people are very, very present in this experience, which is really nice. And we actually had a problem this year. It's a good problem to have, but it can quickly become unsustainable. That we have room for 58 people in this program. It's a very specific number because that is the number of beds in the place that we do it. Because in the summertime, this is a massive camp. In the winter, it's mostly maintenance. It's preparing for the next year, but there are a couple of facilities that are year-round. and the one where our students stay fits 58 people. So we had 122 applicants
Huh.
for these 58 spots. So it's an awesome problem to have, but it is a problem. We essentially had to say no to just as many people as we said yes to,
Sure.
which we're used to not being able to take everybody, but sort of this perspective, or this amount was pretty big. So got some stuff going on behind the scenes to see if maybe we can address that in a better way, other than saying, hey, better luck next time. But they're not ready for prime time yet, but hopefully I'll have some good stuff to announce next year, we'll see.
And what's been the common threads between the people that you've had coming into this program right here to do this talk?
Well, the obvious common thread is they went here, but let's see.
Have you heard anything that everybody said not to do?
Well, in some version, and this is so we had that Music Mentors program I told you, the language tends to be a little spicier in there, so I'm going to jump back into that for a minute. But one of our cohorts from our music era came back and said that, it's so awesome, it's so important to be awesome and to not be a dick.
I think I know who said that.
Yeah, he said it many times. It got inappropriately attributed in an article in The Wire to one of our students.
Oh!
Hey, that's fine.
Yeah.
But a lot of it really does come down to what you were saying about, do what you say you're going to do, but also the relationship side of it. In that program, we're trying to teach it in a music-centric environment, but we had earlier last semester, we had a guy who is a professional firefighter. He's a captain with the the Durham Fire Department. And he also has a family business that's an engineering firm in Stratham. And he's the moderator for his town. And so a lot of that was the importance of, good relationships. When you're working on town politics, it can be a heated issue, but these people are also your neighbors.
Yeah.
So it's very important to voice what you view as being important, but in a way that's not going to totally turn off the neighbor, because when it comes down to it, they're still going to live next to you. And I've recently entered the world of home ownership, and I'm very fortunate to have this awesome next door neighbor, Al, who has been the neighbor to my house since 1995, and he's seen what's gone well, he's seen what's gone poorly. And when we were still pretty new to it, my wife was digging in the garden, and we had a couple of snow shovels and a couple of small garden implements, but she was going after something that the root bulb ended up being this big, and he comes over with a shovel. And it's important to have the neighbor connection. So that's some of the stuff that we're trying to pass on in one way. You also, you were mentioning taking ownership of your time here at UNH. And that's another thread that we have, whether that is through formal involvement in student organizations or less formal, like the route you and I had when we went through. Another person that came in through this program, she was a volleyball player here, and now she's the associate head coach. And so her program, her track was very linear. It's within sport. We also did the director of our dining program, who he went to UNH. He actually worked in the dining outfit here, spent some time with the Marriott system, and has come back here and kind of melded together what he knew about the traditions here, but also what he learned in the larger service industry.
Yeah, I mean, I think the moral of the story is you see the same people all around. What goes around comes around. It's the same dudes. Yeah. And what you don't want to hear is he was a lot nicer on the way down than he was on the way up.
Yeah.
That's so it's always good to remember. You're going to live next to the same people. People you sit next to in class, you're going to see them again. Yeah. Guarantee you. And you're going to end up working with them. And it's an increasingly small world. So behaving ethically and nicely in a business sense is a really important thing.
Yeah, and as you were saying, it's getting more and more connected. So, it could have been back in the day that, you really kind of poisoned one pond, you can move over and start again somewhere else. You get a digital footprint now.
Absolutely, yeah.
More, it feels like, at least, maybe it's just because I'm going to more, but there's more and more conferences. I've been going to some conferences now about 3-4 years in a row. And you see the same couple of people and you see the same presentations. And, you've got to maintain kind of good presence and good relations.
Yeah.
Definitely something you see.
Well, and again, like your professors, you're going to need them.
Yeah.
You're going to need them. So it's always good to have a good relationship with those guys because they're going to help you down the line.
Yeah.
And that's it's super important. And I think that's what a lot of these guys taught me. The one fellow here, really sweet guy. I miss him terribly. His name was Michael Deporte. He was the head of the English department. He's a really nice guy, and he taught this great class, which I don't know if it still exists. I think he started. It might have died with him. It was called Madness in Literature. It was all about unreliable narration, which was just so awesome.
Huh.
And he was this great, wispy-haired, absent-minded professor type guy, but really sharp, smart guy. And I found out that he did these great line illustrations, kind of what looked like woodcuts. And he ended up doing my band's first album cover while I was still a student here.
Nice.
And he was just the sweetest guy in the world, and I kept in touch with him right up until he passed. And it was really nice. He was always so helpful professionally with me. And if I ever needed anything, recommendation or anything like that, letter of introduction, he would always give it to me. So
That's cool.
I think that's that was something that really stuck with me for sure.
I was wondering if you could comment on brain drain, the tendency for young people, particularly like new graduates, to leave the state. I mean, it's a big problem in New Hampshire particularly, and I think in particular for performers, where there isn't necessarily a lot of stuff going on in New Hampshire, so do you find that is there no hope, or is there a way out? Is there a way that these students, these performers, can find a way of staying on the seacoast or in New Hampshire and still make a way as a performer, or do they really have to go to New York or LA or Chicago or Nashville or whatever it might be?
Well, I think that if you look at it, it's both business and art, right? So these two things are an issue, because you have something where, in my opinion, I think there's not a lot of community organization of people who are organically putting on, let's say, shows, programs, festivals, this type of thing. It doesn't happen very frequently where people band together and do it.
Right.
So what they end up doing is saying, okay, these three bands put on a show together. Let's do it at the club
Yep.
that everybody else does it at, right? So there's one element of it that's organic, but yet it's still hogs at the same trough, going to the exact same financial resources and venues. Same thing happens with business. You don't see a ton of really mega entrepreneurial people starting stuff from scratch and then creating jobs from that point. It's, these people getting attracted to, talented people getting attracted to larger corporations, because that's what has been successful here.
Yeah.
So it's the lack of opportunity in the state, I think, that is from the bottom up. I mean, there's stuff that, there's always the same clubs and the same companies you can work for, but you don't see a lot of that just, I'm going to go out there and I'm going to start a troupe and I'm going to do this and I'm going to do X, Y, and Z. I mean, it does exist, for sure. But there isn't a ton of it. So what happens is the people that I think have that vibe and that they want to do something like that, they have to go to some place where there's more people who are doing it, and those are the larger cities. And then it's harder because your cost of living goes up. Your chances for success go down, for sure. There's way more static, way more white noise. It's way harder to do.
Yeah.
And we see all the time. And I was asked out in LA, I was giving a talk, and someone said, well, why didn't you start your company in New York or LA? It would have been financially impossible. I mean, it just wouldn't be possible to do it. So I think that's a big part of the brain drain, is just that it is like, it's a snake eating its own tail. It's, it's not happening because it's not happening, and it's not happening. And then from that point, what do you do? So I think it's a huge issue. But it really is depressing to see a lot of people that I know, they said, well, I had to leave because there weren't enough opportunities for the types of gigs that I want to get. And if the scope of what you want to do is to pay your bills and to play, gigs at the bars, that is totally cool. I know a lot of people that do that. I did it. I think it's completely fine. But I think if you want to do something a little bit different or a little bit more bold, it becomes difficult. And then it becomes harder, even on our end, when we're doing business with people in LA or New York, they say, where are you? It has a seacoast? You get that an awful lot, it's that big, but yeah, it's,
We're not far from it, and there it is.
yeah, and it's too bad. And I think a lot of the other issue too is there's a big disconnect between what's happening here and in the middle of the state. And of course, the northern part of the state. I mean, but I mean, I think the middle of the state in this area, we might as well be on separate coasts in terms of what's happening in the communication and, just trading of talent. Seems like it's pretty cut to me,
Yeah. I mean, if I can throw in, I've definitely seen people leave. The guy who I was in bands with from back in school as well, he and his band really located themselves in Providence. One of them was gonna go to school down there, and my friend Pat, he wasn't going to school, day job in music was his route. They went down to Providence because there was a better scene there, and then the Station Club fire hit.
Yep.
Like that year.
Yeah.
And Providence dried up for quite some time. It seems to be coming back now. They've been playing cooler stuff. The one thing that you couldn't take away from their decision to move to Providence, though, was striking distance to Boston, striking distance to New York.
Sure.
If anything decides to happen in Connecticut,
Right.
same. But it sort of would depend there.
I mean, from a grassroots thing,
Yeah.
you know, I think just fewer and fewer venues are wanting to present live music. I just think it's,
Or they're wanting to present things that aren't a sure thing.
yeah, absolutely, you know, and I mean, when I have a jukebox and I can make sure people dance and they know the tunes, why would I hire a band to do it, you know? So it's that's difficult, and that leads people to just get the hell out of Dodge, you
Yeah.
know?
It's tough.
It is tough, yeah.
But flash forward now, I mean, they've had some very well received, what they at least they have now that we didn't back before was online followings.
Yeah, sure.
They've been very well received by lots of blogs. That's translated to exposure, but in the
People
end,
die of exposure, man.
That's true. Well, and that's the other thing is, long run, sort of because of the way that town had dried up for a while. I'm not sure if you objectively look back if they had to, if it would have been any different if they had stayed in New Hampshire,
Right.
or gone to Boston or Providence.
Make your own luck,
Yeah, you
make
know,
your own luck.
you do the best you can with it, and they have done well with it, and they're putting out work that they find very fulfilling.
But I mean, again, in a place which is arid as this is sometimes, we're in a college town that has no live music venue. It's absolute madness. I can't believe it. You know, so you have to make it up. You know, you got to make your own thing. You know, and that's I think what we've tried to do as a company. You know, we've got a festival that we put on in the summer, and we've just tried to say, you know what, no one else is doing it, so we're going to do it. Why not?
So we're doing Parma 2 this summer?
And we are.
Are
4
we?
days,
August again, or?
August 13 and 16.
Nice.
Yeah.
Very
Parma 2, the return.
Any public details yet, or?
A few. There's some
Okay.
stuff floating out there.
All
Yeah,
right.
we got a few things going on. We're doing we work with C-SPAN, which I'm sure all of you guys we're gonna go home right now and you're gonna watch C-SPAN. I mean, it's
It sounds like there's gonna be good tunes on it.
exactly.
Yeah.
No, it's actually, you know, C-SPAN actually serves a super valuable function, which does not exist in other countries like Russia. Or, you know, I mean, it's total transparency of the government of what's going on, what's
Sure.
happening as it's happening. This does not exist in other countries. In the countries that I work in, you know, when I talk to them about this, it's like, what? You can see this, you know? But we partner with them, we supply them with the music that they use in their programming. And their programming consists of some television programs, but just the House, you know, the actual House representatives. And when it's not in session, they need music to actually fill the space, and we supply that.
I did
And we
not
do,
know that.
and we do, we've done a theme song for them, and probably gonna do a couple others, but we're gonna do one concert, it's gonna be a C-SPAN concert, featuring the music that we put on, so President of C-SPAN is coming up, he's a great dude, and there's a guy who, you know, he's classically trained.
Yeah.
He runs a very substantial television, you know, channel, and he moonlights on weeknights in Washington DC playing organ in a blues band.
Nice.
Very interesting guy, so that'll be happening this summer.
Very cool.
It'll be very cool.
We're looking forward to that.
Yeah.
Well, unless there's any closing thoughts, I think this is sort of a nice bringing it back to Parma and what you're doing now.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
Hey, thanks for coming. Please
Great.
join me in thanking Bob. Great, thank you very much, everybody. If you're looking for updates on the other programs, we have one more of our TEDx programs. I think not next Tuesday, but the one after, and one more of our leadership workshops. So, thank you very much, and we'll see you soon.
Thanks.